And I want to end my talk by sharing a small story with you which encompasses these 5 key commitments. The story is that I used to be a professional accountant. I had 3 degrees. I was an ACCA from England, a CPA or CGA from Canada, and a chartered financial planner. And I practiced accounting for 15 years. But one day, on October 10th at 10 o'clock in the morning in 1997, I call it the 10-10-10 moment. It was 10 o'clock in the morning, it was 10th of the month, and October being the 10th month of the year. So 10-10-10. And I was actually interviewing a client who had won $15 million lottery as an accountant. So while I'm interviewing and consulting with this client who had won a lottery, $15 million, at the stroke of 10, I get a call. Now there's a sign already. What's the sign? 10-10-10, and I have a lottery guy, $15 million. So this phone call could be my lottery, but I never thought of that. So phone call is from this fellow called Firoz Rasool, who was the chairperson of Focus Humanitarian Agency in Canada, a non-profit organization, calling me and saying, Azim, we need your help. I said, what's up, Firoz? He said, we want you to go to Karachi to work with the Afghan refugees and to do budgeting for Focus. The phone went dead. I'm saying to myself, no way, Firoz, I'm not going. So he's saying, what happened? Are you still there, Azim? Yes, I said, I'm still here, but can I phone you back in the afternoon? I have to check with my wife, Razana. He said, yeah, please check, but let me know this afternoon. It's very important. I said, no problem. I put the phone down. I finished my meeting with my lottery guy, and I phoned my wife. I said, honey, you want to go for coffee? So my wife is wondering, what's this coffee meeting on a weekday? She comes by. I knew the answer is no. You know why I knew the answer is no? Because from 11th July 2003 to 11th July 11th July 1993 to 11th July 1997, 4 years, I was the chairman of a social welfare board, putting 25 hours a week on a voluntary basis. On 12th July 1997, I went for a youth camp as a director. I spent 40 days, doing 15 hours a day on a voluntary basis. I would just come back from my camp with the youth. I'm going to tell my wife, honey, I'm going to Karachi for 6 weeks. My wife said, yeah, go, but don't bother coming back. So I knew the answer is no. I mean, I have to be fair, I have to be reasonable. I can't just disappear. But I said, I must ask her, otherwise I'll feel guilty. I never discussed with my wife. So now I'm having coffee with her, but I'm having difficulty how to ask her. Getting no is not a problem, but how do I ask her? So I'm dilly-dallying, I'm wishy-washy, and my wife is wondering, what is this coffee meeting about? So eventually I pluck up my courage, and I say, Farzana, Firoz had called. She says, I knew there's something up your sleeve. Because every time Firoz calls, there's something, you have to go somewhere. So I was going to tell her, look, I know the answer is no, but before I could get there, she says, go. You see, my wife is born in Mumbai. She's gone through a lot of poverty, she's seen poverty around her, and she identified the cause of the Afghan refugees. And she said, look, we have to help them. And Azim, you're pretty good at it, and you're passionate about it. You must go. I must say I was pleasantly surprised, so I went. So I spent 6 weeks in Karachi working with the Afghan refugees. Now many things happened on the 6 weeks, but I want to share with you one small thing. I went to this small hut. There were 14 Afghan refugees staying in this small hut. And my job was to ask them questions so that I know how much money they need to live in as part of my budgeting. But first of all, when I go there, the hut itself is like there's mosquitoes, there's washroom, there's kitchen, there's like really pathetic environment. But I'm asking them questions and I hear stories about how they'd gone from war to war to war, how children had seen their father being killed for their eyes, how they had not gone to school for many years, how they fled Kabul and walked for 19 days in the mountain in the cold weather with just a shirt on their back, how some women gave birth to children in the mountain, how some people got sick in the mountain but had to keep on walking, otherwise they would die. Eventually they make it to Karachi after 19 days, 20 days of walking. They come there, they had no rights to stay there. So they're staying in these small huts. And most of them are selling corn on a trolley for 14 hours in the day in the blazing hot sun and making $1 a day, not even enough to pay for their hut. And the stories were so draining that I got physically sick in 20 minutes. I just couldn't take the stories. It was too much for me. So as a coward, I walked out of the hut. Now, as soon as I go out of the hut, the whole village is outside the hut. They were not there when I went in, but they're there when I'm coming out. Why? Because they saw me in a tie. And they said, this guy is wearing a tie. He must help us. He must be very important. So next time, don't wear ties, okay? So I go out, and you know what I see? Mostly women and children. Most men had died. And I don't know if you've seen an Afghan child. Rosy cheeks, big eyes, and a smile on their face despite their plight. I didn't know what to do. I was there no more than 20 seconds. But that 20 seconds was like eternity. I didn't know what to do. I walked away. I was sick. I walked away. My cab is waiting. I boarded my cab and went to Marriott Hotel. 25 minutes ride to Marriott Hotel from the hut. And I was sitting at the back of the cab, and I was shivering and I was sweating. In the hot weather, I was shivering and I was sweating. And I cried, and I cried, and I cried. Watching out of the window in Karachi. If you ask me, Azim, tell me one moment in your life that you call a defining moment, that your life changed completely, I would refer to that cab ride, 25 minutes. Because I was so shaken. I was so shaken that I realized, why would people be in that kind of state? So I reached the Marriott Hotel. I entered the lobby. My colleague, his name is Aziz Sharif, was sitting there. I hadn't said a word. He saw my face and said, Azim, what's wrong? I guess he saw my face was shaken, there was plight. I didn't want to talk to Aziz. I want to go to my room, put a pillow on my face and keep crying more. The last thing I want to do is discuss this. But Aziz is a hardcore businessman, wearing cufflinks, tie, suit. He's probably, what's wrong, what's wrong? So I had to tell him something to get him off my back so I can go to my room and cry. So I tell Aziz, if I had to die for one cause in my life, I would die for a cause like that. So I went in my room, my hotel, and I had a sleepless night. I tossed and I turned. And I said, I died, big deal, how did I help them? Nothing. So what can I do in my life that I can help people like this? And that night, I realized I was an accountant. I had 3 degrees. I was a senior partner. I was making good money, $200 an hour, consulting, US dollars. But I wasn't passionate. I could never be the top accountant in the world. So I asked myself, what can I do in my life that I can help people like this? In that night, I realized that my gift was to speak, because I used to speak in those days. Not as a profession, but as a hobby. So I would speak in Australia, maybe New Zealand, maybe France. They would call me, I would speak, 3 months later they'll call me back. They didn't pay me for my time, but they would pay for the hotel, they would pay for the flight. So they spent a few $1,000s each time they call me. And I said, I'm doing this as a hobby, and they keep calling me back. What would happen if I did this as a profession? So in that night, I decided, I set myself 3 goals as an accountant. I said, in 10 years, I will raise $40 million for charity and help people like this, because they need food, they need clothing, they need basic needs, which require money. Goal number 2, I said, I'll write books about giving so that people give more, because we need to give. And I said, I'll sell at least 5.7 million copies of my books. Why 5.7 million? Because at that time, in 1997, there were 5.7 billion people, so I took a fraction. And I said that in 10 years, I'll be one of the finest inspirational speakers in the world, top 10, so when I speak, people hear me. Otherwise, who's going to hear my message? That was my goal. I came back to Vancouver. I told my wife, honey, guess what? I'm changing my career. My wife says, oh my God, why did I allow you to go to Karachi in the first place? Because my son was 3. My daughter was 8. My wife says, how are you going to survive? How are you going to send him to university? So it was a tough sell. It took me a long time to convince my wife and my partner. Eventually, my wife agreed on one condition. She said, I'll let you do it on a condition. I said, what's the condition? She said, we don't sell our accounting business. I said, done. And that was the best thing I did. If I had sold my accounting business, I would be bankrupt by now, because I struggled in this new career. And the accounting business kept us going while I was making my way to this. Now, in this new business, I was like a bulldozer. One year I spoke 170 times across the world. The following year I spoke 180 times. I'd given every inch, every ounce, every passion. I spent 10,000 hours writing my first book called 7 Steps to Lasting Happiness. Do the math. 10,000 hours, my hourly rate is an accountant of $200 an hour. I lost $2 million. Not to mention all the extra money I spent. Now, sometimes I used to go and speak, there'll be 300 chairs. We do a big event. I go there, nobody's shown up. Zero. Sometimes one person shows up. One day I took a friend of mine and said, come with me. He came with me, there are so many chairs, big event, we market, we publish. One person showed up. 2-hour session. And I'm talking to one person like there's 10,000 people for 2 hours. My friend's looking at me, this guy's crazy, man. Everybody thought I was crazy because I couldn't see. I couldn't see all the failures. I was just going. Until February 2000. My book was out. My book, by the way, my book was out. Abdul, we have something in common. You started your business 13 July 3 years ago. My first book, 7 Steps to Lasting Happiness, was published 13 years ago. On 13 July 1999. So 13, and today is Friday the 13th. Very lucky day. So I went to the bookstore in February 2000, 7 months later after my book is published. So now it's a bookstore called Chapters in Canada, biggest bookstore chain in Canada. So I go in the bookstore to check my book out. My goal is 5.7 million copies. So the first step is to get the book in the bookstore before you sell it, right? I'm going to sell 5.7 million copies. So I go to the bookstore. Now you don't go in the bookstore and say, hey, do you carry my book? You don't ask for your own book, right? So what do? There's 10,000 books. So I go to the computer. So I go in the computer and I press 7 because the book is called 7 Steps to Lasting Happiness. When I press 7, the computer blurts out there are 70 books on 7 something. So I go through each one. My book is not there. So I go up, I go down, I go sideways, this way, I don't find my book. So I put happiness in the computer. The computer blurts out 70 books on happiness. So I go through each one, up, down, sideways, this way. My book is not there. I'm saying to myself, what kind of bookstore is this? Then I put my name, Azim, A-Z-I-M, Jamal, J-A-M-A. I don't put L. I look, anybody watching? Nobody watching? Because everything is negative, nobody's watching, so I put L. As soon as I put L, the computer blurts out, author. I said, wow, finally something is coming out. Author, unknown. I said, man, I gave every inch, every ounce, every passion, everything I had. I went through so much humiliation, nobody showed up, I never gave up. Now I can't even put a book in the bookstore. How can I help the Afghan refugees? I can't even help myself. I was depressed. I was depressed. I walked away from the computer, depressed. As I'm walking away from the computer, depressed, from all the 10,000 books, there is one small book staring at me. I'm saying, what's your problem? Why are you staring at me? You want me to read to you right now? Do you know I've been reading 2 books a week on average? And look where I am, and the last thing I want to do is read another book. Forget it. I'm walking away, but it's like a light, like a beacon. I'm saying, why are you following me? And why am I talking to you? Only a book. Forget it. So I walk away. I come to the door at Chapters. Now I have 3 choices. Either I go to my car, or I go to the bathroom, or I go to the book. And in that moment of integrity, Kavi calls that the moment of integrity. In that moment of integrity, I decide to go to the book, but with one condition, that I'll only read the introduction. I have no desire to read the whole book. So I said, since you are so interested in me and showing me this light, let me see the introduction. So I go to this small book and I read the introduction. A story of a guy who goes to Second World War. And he comes back from Second World War and he's selling life insurance. Now nobody is buying life insurance after Second World War because nobody is dying. So he goes broke. His wife divorces him, his kid leaves him. So his life is a mess. So he gets into drinking. One day, he had lost his family, he's lost his kid, he's lost all his money. He had $30 left in his pocket. And he was walking in the month of November in Cleveland, in USA, in the cold weather. As he's walking in the month of November in Cleveland in the cold weather, his life being totally messed up, lost his family, lost all his money, he comes across a pawn shop. In the pawn shop, there's a gun being sold for $29 and a bullet for $1. He said, I buy the gun, I buy the bullet, and that's it. I'm done. Easy. Then he writes, he didn't have the spine to go in the store, stand in the lineup, wait for his turn, buy the gun, buy the bullet, put the bullet in the gun, go to find a place to kill himself. It's too much work. So he kept walking. He kept walking and he came across the library. Now it's very cold outside, so he goes in the library, and inside the library it's very warm, and nobody stops him. So he wanders in the library, and suddenly he comes to a section on self-help, motivation. So he picks up a book, and he reads the book. And he likes the book because he's looking for himself. His life is a mess. So next day he goes again to read another book, and keep going back. Until one day he comes across a book by W. Clement Stone and Napoleon Hill called Success Through a Positive Mental Attitude. And he loves the book. He says, I want to meet the authors. And he finds out that W. Clement Stone was the president of a corporation, and there was a branch in the city he lived in. So he went to apply for a job in the branch, hoping that one day he will meet W. Clement Stone. To cut a long story short, the editor of the company retires. So he goes to apply for a job as an editor because he says, that's my key to meet W. Clement Stone. Now when he goes for the interview for the editor, because he's reading so many books, he's quite energized and quite inspired and quite motivated. He convinces the guy to give him a job as an editor. At that time, he writes his first book, when he becomes an editor. Now, how many books will this guy sell? He's a drunk, he wants to commit suicide, he's lost his family, his life is a mess. Look at me, I've traveled the world, I've spoken to so many people, I was a senior partner in an accounting firm, I have a fantastic network. I can't put a book in the bookstore, forget about selling. Selling is secondary. How many books did this guy sell? One to himself, one to his cousin, one to the library? Have a guess. How many books will this guy sell? How many? Million. What did you have for breakfast? I can't put a book in the bookstore, and this guy who is going to commit suicide will sell 1 million. Is that possible? Is that possible? Yes. Something wrong with me, right? Well, the truth is, he has sold today 50 million copies. When I read that book, he had sold 36 million. He wrote 20 plus books in 20 plus languages, and the first book he wrote sold 10 million copies. His name is Og Medina, who I mentioned earlier, and the first book he wrote was called The Greatest Salesman in the World. Now, why am I sharing this story with you? What is the universe telling me? Azim, you put every inch, you put every ounce, you put every passion, you gave all your money, you gave everything you had. Hey, if Og can do it, you can do it. You never went to the stage when you want to put a gun on your head yet. So I ran home. I went to my homepage, my website, corporatesufi.com. I put a quote. Saying, when the night is the darkest, dawn. My daughter's name is Dawn, Sahar. Dawn is the closest. When you're at your lowest of the low, then light is nearby. Now, things didn't change overnight. I still struggled, but gradually started changing. And then the success came. You heard about it, 2005, reading Harry Potter, Amazon #1, again 2008. All this success came later, but I almost gave up. Now, if you look at this story, look at these 5 commitments. P-O-W-E-R. Then a P, I got a phone call from Firoz to say, go and serve the Afghan refugees. With my wife's blessings, I said yes. The power of giving kicked in. Then when I was serving and I was exposed to abject poverty, when my soul was shaken, my life, my whole defining moment happened in that soul-stirring experience, I stumbled. I stumbled into my gift, my birthday gift of being a speaker, an inspiring speaker, an author. Oh, open your gift. Then, what did I aim? $40 million raising, 5.7 million copies book sale, top 10 inspirational speaker in the world. As an accountant, I couldn't think more than $500,000. I couldn't think more than that. My aim was so low. So I had a winning attitude. I aimed very high. Then what happened? Enlightened, persistent. I was going everywhere. Nobody showed up. I was being humiliated. I couldn't sell books. Everything was going wrong. My money was gone. My profession was gone. Everything was gone. I was persisting. But my persistence was enlightened because I had a goal larger than self. I had a goal larger than self. The subject had disappeared in the object. So my goal was enlightened, persistence. And then when I was almost giving up, because nothing was happening, I couldn't put a book in the bookstore, an Arctic team, power, I had a sign. Og Mandino's book was a sign. And in that moment of integrity, in the moment of present, I saw that ayat. And I went to that book. And that has led me to where I am today. There's a sign for each one of you. In this session, in this message, there's a sign for you. If you follow that sign and act on it, your life will never be the same. You can change your destiny. You can change your future. You cannot change the past, but you can create the future. Why? Because each one of you here is nature's greatest miracle. Thank you very much. Thank you.